So, what if I told you there's this hidden financial system, one that's basically owned us for centuries? Well, according to a writer named Vivify Mariposa, that system is very real. And right now, someone is tearing it apart piece by piece. So today, we're going to dig into that idea. Okay, so where does this all start? Well, it kicks off with a mystery. Back in early 2025, a truly unprecedented amount of physical gold and silver started moving across the Atlantic. And the source asks a pretty simple question. Why? Right? What could possibly trigger such a massive shift in the world's oldest form of money? And this chart, wow, it shows you exactly what we're talking about. Look, over on the left, you've got the vaults in London, which has been the historic heart of the precious metals world forever, and they're just draining out. Meanwhile, on the right, the inventories in New York's COMEX, their main commodities market, they're just surging. The author makes the case that this isn't just some shipping logistics. No, this is a physical migration of wealth and power. It's a massive signal. So to really get why this is happening, the author says we have to go way, way back. I'm talking before gold, before dollars, back to a simple mineral that our bodies literally can't live without. The whole argument is that the very first system of control ever built wasn't based on money. It was built on salt. And you see the same pattern play out again and again throughout history. The Romans, they built entire roads just to lock down the salt supply. Fast forward to France, and a super unpopular salt tax actually helped spark a revolution. Or think about India, where Gandhi's famous Salt March was a direct challenge to the British Empire. See, the source argues the playbook is always the same. If you control something everybody needs, you control everybody. Okay, so this brings us to the key concept. The author calls it the insertion. And it's actually a really simple idea. It's the act of placing a middleman, a bank, a government, some institution, between you and something you absolutely need. And then, of course, they charge you a fee just for access. This idea, the insertion, it's the key to understanding this whole thing. So how does this insertion idea work in the modern world? Well, according to the author, after World War II, the whole system was basically split in two. The US got the incredible power to print the world's reserve currency, the dollar. But London held on to a different, but just as crucial power. They got to control the price of everything that money buys. Think oil, gold, all the big commodities. Right, but how does this big abstract system actually affect your life, like on a daily basis? Well, the author points to things we all know and deal with constantly. We're talking about credit cards and, credit scores. Just think about this number for a second, $2.1 trillion. According to the source, that's the insertion fee, the middleman's cut that Americans have paid just in credit card interest since 2010. And to put that into perspective, that's more than the entire student debt crisis in the US, all of it paid to just a handful of financial institutions. It's staggering. And we're not talking about a small group of people here, 111 million. That's how many Americans are stuck in this cycle, carrying a credit card balance every single month. The author basically frames this as the modern-day version of that old French salt tax. It's a fee you're forced to pay just to play the game, just to exist in the economy. And this quote from the author, man, it just perfectly captures what it feels like to be trapped inside this system. You are evaluated by a formula you cannot see, maintained by companies you never hired. Think about that. It's this black box that can decide whether you get a house, a car, even a job, and you have no idea how it works. But then the author points to an even bigger example. They bring up a presidential report from back in 1984. It was called the Grace Commission. And it claimed that 100%, every single penny, of individual income tax goes to servicing the national debt and transfer payments, not to the services we all think we're funding. So in the author's view, this is the ultimate insertion fee. Your taxes aren't buying roads or schools. They're just paying the interest on the system itself. Okay, so this is where we get to the absolute core of the argument. All these things that seem disconnected, the gold moving, the pressure on the banks, the author argues they are not random at all. They're part of a coordinated, very intentional plan to take this entire system apart. And the author lays out a very specific sequence of events here, all from early 2025. First, banning a central bank digital currency, a digital dollar. Then, dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. Then, creating a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, which is basically a state-owned investment fund that's completely outside of the Federal Reserve's control. The author argues that each one of these steps is like someone deliberately pulling a specific wire from an old, complicated circuit board.
And at the heart of the U.S. system, you've got the Federal Reserve. The author describes what's happening to it as a full-on siege from multiple directions. We're talking public threats to fire the chair, DOJ subpoenas flying around, even attempts to remove a sitting governor and install a friendly voice on the board. The argument is pretty clear. Its independence is being systematically taken apart.
So, if all the financial and institutional wires are being pulled one by one, what's the last pillar holding this whole structure up? Well, according to the source, it's the military alliance that has acted as the system's bodyguard for more than 75 years. And this is a really critical point. The source argues that NATO was never just a defensive pact. It was the military hardware protecting the Anglo-American financial software. So when you start publicly challenging it, questioning its entire purpose, that's like pulling the last, most important wire of all. And that challenge became, well, incredibly direct. The source points to this specific quote, which was delivered at a summit hosted by Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, of all places. This was the moment the quiet part was finally said out loud, basically declaring the system's military protector obsolete. So let's pull it all together. The author's argument is this. From those ancient salt monopolies all the way to your modern credit score, there's been this system of control, the insertion, running the show for centuries. And what we're supposedly watching right now, from that gold moving across the ocean to these major challenges against global alliances, is the systematic, intentional takedown of that very system.
Look, the source lays out a pretty compelling, and yeah, definitely controversial, case for how a system is being taken apart piece by piece. But it leaves us all with the biggest question imaginable. If this centuries-old system is really breaking down, what on earth gets built in its place?